The moment I saw my mother-in-law's hands trembling over my jewelry box, I knew something was wrong. But I never imagined she'd blame my own sister for what she did. It's strange, the things you remember when your world starts to unravel. The way the morning sun slanted through the kitchen window, catching the dust motes in the air. The smell of coffee brewing, a little too strong because I'd forgotten to clean the pot the night before. The sound of my husband Daniel humming off-key as he shuffled through the mail. Ordinary things, the kind that make up a life. The kind you cling to when everything else starts to slip. That morning, I was running late for work. My daughter Lila was still in her pajamas, hair wild, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. My sister Grace was at the table, scrolling through her phone, her coffee untouched. She'd been staying with us for a few weeks, just until she got back on her feet, she said. I didn't mind. Grace and I had always been close, even if life had taken us in different directions. Daniel's mother, Evelyn, had arrived the night before. She lived 2 hours away, but she liked to visit, especially around anniversaries. She said it was to help with Lila, but I knew she liked to keep an eye on things. On me. She'd never said it outright, but I always felt her watching, weighing, judging. I tried to be the daughter-in-law she wanted, polite, grateful, never too loud or too soft. But with Evelyn, it was never quite enough. That morning, she was already dressed, her hair set in tight curls, her lipstick a little too bright for breakfast. She was fussing over Lila, straightening her pajamas, tisking at the crumbs on the table. I smiled, trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. Big day tomorrow, she said, glancing at me over her glasses. 10 years? That's something? I nodded, pouring myself a cup of coffee. It is. I can't believe it's been that long. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Time flies. You'll want to look your best for dinner. Maybe wear that ring Daniel gave you. The one with the little diamonds. I glanced down at my hand, twisting the simple gold band. My engagement ring. Daniel had saved for months to buy it, back when we were just starting out. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Ours. I wore it every day, except when I was cleaning or cooking. I'd left it in my jewelry box the night before, safe and sound. I will, I said, forcing a smile. It's my favorite. Evelyn nodded, satisfied. She turned back to Lila, who was now trying to feed her rabbit a piece of toast. Grace looked up from her phone, her eyes meeting mine. She gave me a small, tired smile. I wondered, not for the first time, if she regretted coming to stay with us. Things had been tense since Evelyn arrived. The house felt smaller, the air heavier. After breakfast, I gathered my things for work. I kissed Lila on the head, hugged Grace, and promised Evelyn I'd be home early to help with dinner. As I left, I glanced back at the kitchen. Evelyn was watching me, her lips pressed into a thin line. The day passed in a blur of meetings and emails. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting back to home. To Grace, to Lila, to Evelyn. I wondered if Daniel would remember to pick up the cake I'd ordered. I wondered if Grace would find a job soon, or if she'd decide to stay a little longer. I wondered if Evelyn would ever truly accept me. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. Lila was napping, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Grace was in her room, the door closed. Evelyn was in the living room, knitting something pink and lacy. She looked up as I walked in. Long day? She asked. I nodded, setting my bag down. You could say that. She watched me for a moment, her needles clicking. You should check your jewelry box. Make sure everything's in order for tomorrow. I frowned, surprised. Why? She shrugged, her eyes never leaving mine. Just a thought. You know how things can go missing in a busy house. I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to laugh it off. I'm sure everything's fine. But later, after dinner, when Lila was in bed and Daniel was watching TV, I went to our bedroom. I opened my jewelry box, expecting to see my ring nestled in its usual spot. It was gone. At first, I thought I'd misplaced it. I searched the drawers, the nightstand, even the bathroom. Nothing. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it would turn up. Maybe I'd left it in the kitchen or dropped it in the laundry. But as the minutes ticked by, panic set in. I retraced my steps, searching every corner of the house. Grace came out of her room, rubbing her eyes. What's going on? She asked. My ring, I said, my voice shaking. It's missing. She frowned, looking genuinely concerned. Did you check the bathroom? Sometimes Lila, I checked everywhere, I said, trying not to snap. It's just gone. Evelyn appeared in the hallway, her face a mask of concern. What's all this noise? My ring is missing, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Oh dear, that's terrible. Are you sure you didn't misplace it? I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I always put it in the same place. She looked at Grace, her eyes narrowing. Well, there's only so many people in this house. Grace stared at her, stunned. Are you saying I took it? Evelyn shrugged, her voice icy. I'm just saying, things have a way of disappearing when certain people are around. I looked from Evelyn to Grace, my heart pounding. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, but something in Evelyn's eyes told me this was just the beginning. The house felt colder that night, as if the missing ring had taken all the warmth with it. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. Daniel was asleep beside me, his breathing deep and even, oblivious to the storm brewing just down the hall. I kept replaying the evening in my mind. Evelyn's words echoed, sharp and deliberate. Things have a way of disappearing when certain people are around. She hadn't said Grace's name, but she didn't have to. The implication hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Grace had gone back to her room without another word. I wanted to follow her, to tell her I didn't believe it, that I knew she would never steal from me. But I didn't. I just lay there, paralyzed by doubt and fear, wondering how something as small as a ring could tear open such a deep wound. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I found Grace in the kitchen, staring out the window, a mug of cold coffee in her hands. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Did you sleep? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head. Not really. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the distance that had sprung up between us overnight. But before I could, Evelyn swept into the room, her perfume trailing behind her like a warning. Any luck finding the ring? She asked, her tone sweet, but her eyes sharp. I shook my head. No, I've looked everywhere. She sighed, loud and theatrical. Such a shame. It was such a lovely ring. Sentimental, too. Grace set her mug down with a little more force than necessary. I didn't take it, you know. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. I never said you did, dear. Grace's jaw tightened. You didn't have to. I felt the tension crackling between them, like static before a storm. I wanted to say something, to defend my sister, but the words caught in my throat. I hated myself for it. Daniel came in, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? Nothing, I said quickly. Just talking about the ring, he frowned. It'll turn up. Lila probably took it. You know how she likes shiny things. Evelyn shook her head. I doubt a child could hide something so well. No, this feels deliberate. Daniel looked at her, then at me, confusion clouding his face. Mom, let's not start blaming people. She shrugged, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She'd planted the seed, and now she was just waiting for it to grow. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I went through every room again, searching for the ring. I checked under the couch cushions, behind the dresser, even in the trash. Nothing. Each time I came up empty, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. Grace stayed in her room most of the day. When she did come out, she barely spoke. Lila sensed the tension, clinging to me more than usual, her big brown eyes searching my face for reassurance I couldn't give. Evelyn, on the other hand, seemed to thrive on the chaos. She made herself busy, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, rearranging the flowers on the table, humming tunelessly under her breath. Every so often she'd glance at Grace, her lips curling into a faint, satisfied smile. That evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, I heard voices in the hallway. I stepped out to find Evelyn and Grace standing face to face, their voices low but intense. I know what you're doing, Grace was saying, her voice trembling with anger. You've never liked me, but blaming me for this? That's low even for you. Evelyn's smile was cold. If the shoe fits, dear, Grace's hands balled into fists. You're trying to turn my own sister against me. Evelyn leaned in, her voice barely a whisper. You don't belong here, Grace. You never have. I stepped between them, my heart pounding. Enough, both of you. They fell silent, but the damage was done. The air was thick with accusation and resentment. After dinner, I found Grace sitting on the back porch, her shoulders hunched against the evening chill. I sat beside her, wrapping my arms around my knees. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I should have defended you." She shook her head, blinking back tears. "It's not your fault. She's always hated me. I can't believe she'd do this." I reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "We'll find the ring. I know you didn't take it." She looked at me, her eyes shining with gratitude and pain. "Thank you." We sat in silence for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. For a moment, it almost felt like things could go back to normal. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Not until the truth came out. The next morning I woke before dawn, the house still and silent. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I kept thinking about my ring, where it could be, who could have taken it, and why. I thought about Grace, about the look in her eyes when Evelyn accused her. I thought about Evelyn herself, so calm, so certain, as if she already knew how this would end. I got up quietly, careful not to wake Daniel. I padded down the hallway, the floorboards cool beneath my feet. I paused outside Grace's door, listening for any sign that she was awake. Nothing. I moved on, past Lila's room, where I could hear her soft, even breathing. In the kitchen, I made coffee, the familiar routine grounding me. I watched the sun rise through the window, the sky slowly brightening from gray to pale blue. I tried to tell myself it was just a ring, just a piece of jewelry, but it wasn't. It was a symbol of love, of trust, of everything Daniel and I had built together. And now it was gone. Evelyn came in a little while later, dressed and made up as if she were going to a party instead of just another day at our house. She smiled at me, but there was something in her eyes, something cold and calculating. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. I shook my head. "Too much on my mind." She sipped her coffee, watching me over the rim of her cup. "You know, sometimes things disappear for a reason. Maybe it's a sign," I frowned. "A sign of what?" She shrugged, setting her cup down. "Maybe it's time to let go of the past. Start fresh." I stared at her, trying to read her expression. Was she talking about the ring or something else? Before I could ask, Grace walked in, her hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes. "Morning," she mumbled, reaching for a mug. Evelyn didn't say anything, but the silence between them was thick and heavy. I tried to break it, talking about Lila's school project, about the weather, about anything but the ring. But it was always there, lurking beneath the surface. Later that day, Daniel called me at work. "Any news?" he asked, his voice hopeful. I sighed. "No, I've looked everywhere. I even checked the car." He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe we should call the police." I hesitated. "Do you really think it's come to that?" He sighed. "I don't know. I just want this to be over." I hung up, feeling more lost than ever. I didn't want to believe someone in my own family could do this. But the longer the ring was missing, the harder it was to ignore the possibility. That evening, after dinner, I found Lila in her room, playing with her dolls. I sat on the floor beside her, watching as she arranged them in a neat little row. "Did you see Mommy's ring?" I asked gently. She shook her head, her eyes wide. "No, Mommy, I didn't touch it." I believed her. Lila was many things, curious, mischievous, stubborn, but she wasn't a liar. I left her room feeling defeated. As I walked down the hallway, I heard voices coming from the guest room. I paused, listening. "She's always been jealous," Evelyn was saying, her voice low and urgent. "She can't stand to see you happy." Grace's voice was tight with anger. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," Evelyn replied. "You've always been trouble. I warned Daniel about you, but he wouldn't listen." I stepped into the room, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" Evelyn turned to me, her face a mask of concern. "I was just telling Grace how important it is to be honest. Especially in a family," Grace glared at her. "She's trying to turn you against me." I looked from one to the other, my head spinning. "I don't want to fight. I just want my ring back." Evelyn sighed, shaking her head. "Maybe it's time to face facts. If it's not here, someone must have taken it." Grace's eyes filled with tears. You really think I'd steal from you? I shook my head, my own eyes stinging. No, I don't. Evelyn's lips tightened. Well, someone did. The room was silent, the accusation hanging in the air like a storm cloud. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain tapping against the window. I thought about everything that had happened, the missing ring, the accusations, the growing rift between me and Grace. I thought about Evelyn, about the way she always seemed to know just how to push my buttons. I knew I couldn't let this go on. I had to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. The next day was our anniversary. 10 years! I should have woken up feeling grateful, maybe even a little giddy, but instead, I felt hollow. Daniel tried to make the morning special. He brought me coffee in bed, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Happy anniversary, love." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. The missing ring was a shadow over everything. Evelyn was already in the kitchen, humming as she arranged flowers in a vase. She'd made pancakes, the way Daniel liked them, with blueberries and just a hint of lemon. Grace sat at the table silent, picking at her food. Lila chattered about her art project, oblivious to the tension. After breakfast, Daniel left to pick up the cake. Evelyn offered to help me tidy up, but I declined. I needed a moment alone. I wandered into my bedroom, opened the jewelry box again, as if the ring might have magically reappeared. It hadn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the empty velvet slot where my ring should have been. I thought about the day Daniel gave it to me, how his hands shook as he slid it onto my finger, how he'd whispered, "It's not much, but it's everything I have." I'd never cared about the size of the diamond. It was the promise behind it that mattered. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Grace peeked in, her face pale. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, patting the bed beside me. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for all of this, for being here, for causing trouble." I shook my head. "You're not causing trouble, Grace. You're my sister." "I want you here." She looked at me, her eyes shining. "Evelyn hates me. She always has. I don't know what I did to her, but..." I reached for her hand. "You didn't do anything. She's complicated." Grace let out a shaky laugh. "That's one word for it." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on us. "I wish I could prove I didn't take it," she whispered. "I wish I could make her see." I squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out. I promise." Later, as I was folding laundry, I heard Evelyn's voice in the hallway, low and urgent. I crept closer, careful not to be seen. "She's always been jealous," Evelyn was saying, her tone sharp. "She's never liked you, Daniel. She's just using you." Daniel's voice was tired. "Mom, please." "Not today. I'm just saying, you need to be careful. People like her. They take advantage." I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" Evelyn turned, her face a mask of concern. "I was just telling Daniel how important it is to trust the people closest to you." Daniel looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Can we not do this right now?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Of course." The day dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. I tried to focus on the celebration, on Lila's laughter and the smell of cake baking, but my mind kept drifting back to the ring. To Grace, to Evelyn. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Evelyn raised her glass. "To 10 years," she said, her eyes fixed on me. "May the next 10 be even better." I forced a smile, clinking my glass against hers. Grace barely touched her food, her eyes downcast. After dinner, Daniel brought out the cake. Lila sang "Happy Anniversary" at the top of her lungs, her voice sweet and off-key. For a moment, I almost forgot about the ring, about the accusations, about the tension simmering just beneath the surface. But as I was clearing the table, Evelyn pulled me aside. "I know this is hard," she said, her voice soft. "But sometimes you have to make tough choices." "For your family?" I looked at her, searching her face for any sign of warmth. "What are you talking about?" She leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't trust everyone, dear. Not everyone has your best interests at heart." I pulled away, my patience finally snapping. "If you have something to say it." She straightened, her eyes cold. "I think you know who took your ring, and I think you know what you need to do." I stared at her, anger and disbelief warring inside me. "Grace is my sister. She would never..." Evelyn cut me off, her voice icy. People change, especially when they're desperate. I walked away, my hands shaking. I found Grace in the backyard, sitting on the swing set, her head bowed. "I can't stay here," she said as I approached. "I can't keep doing this." I sat beside her, the metal creaking beneath our weight. "Don't go, please." She looked at me, her eyes full of pain. "I don't belong here. Not with her." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, holding her close. "You belong with me, always." The night air was cool, the scent of cut grass sharp in my nose. I closed my eyes, wishing I could turn back time, wishing I could make everything right. But I knew deep down that the only way forward was through the truth. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the house wrapped in a heavy silence. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. I stared at my hands, at the pale line on my finger where my ring used to be. I thought about all the things that had been said and all the things that hadn't. I knew I couldn't let this go on. I couldn't let suspicion poison my family. I needed answers. I started by retracing my steps, thinking back to the last time I'd seen the ring. I remembered taking it off before dinner 2 nights ago, placing it in the velvet slot in my jewelry box. I remembered Evelyn coming into my room later, saying she wanted to borrow a scarf for the chilly evening air. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. A memory flickered, Evelyn's hands, lingering a little too long over my dresser, her eyes darting to the box. I'd been distracted, helping Lila with her bath. I hadn't thought to watch her. A cold certainty settled in my chest. I stood, moving quietly down the hall. I paused outside Evelyn's door, listening. Nothing but the soft rustle of sheets. I went to Grace's room next. She was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale in the moonlight. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "Me neither," I said, sitting beside her. "Grace, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Of course. Did you take my ring?" She flinched, hurt flashing across her face. "No, I swear I didn't. I would never." I reached for her hand, squeezing it. "I believe you. I had to ask," she nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything pressing down on us. "I think Evelyn took it," I said quietly. Grace looked at me, startled. "Why would she do that?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." The next morning, I woke early. I waited until I heard Evelyn in the shower, then slipped into her room. I felt guilty, but I pushed the feeling aside. I opened her suitcase, searching through her neatly folded clothes. Nothing. I checked the pockets of her coat, the lining of her purse. Still nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed her knitting bag, tucked beneath the bed. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. I opened it, pushing aside balls of yarn and half-finished scarves. There, at the bottom, wrapped in a handkerchief, was my ring. For a moment, I just stared at it, my heart pounding. I felt a rush of relief, anger, and betrayal all at once. I slipped the ring into my pocket, my hands trembling. I left the room, closing the door softly behind me. I went to the kitchen, where Daniel was making coffee. "Morning?" he said, smiling. I held out my hand, the ring glinting in the morning light. "Look what I found." He stared at it, then at me. "Where was it?" "In Evelyn's knitting bag," I said quietly. His face darkened. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I'm sure." He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "What do we do?" I looked at him, my resolve hardening. "We tell the truth." We waited until everyone was awake. I called Grace and Evelyn into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. Lila sat on the floor playing with her rabbit, oblivious to the tension. I took a deep breath, holding up the ring. "I found it." Evelyn's eyes widened, her face going pale. "Where?" "In your knitting bag," I said, my voice steady. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, no one spoke. Grace stared at her, disbelief and hurt etched across her face. "Why would you do that?" Evelyn's hands shook as she smoothed her skirt. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to teach you a lesson. You let your sister stay here. You let her take advantage." Daniel cut her off, his voice cold. "Mom, stop!" Evelyn looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. "I was trying to protect you. I thought if I could show you what she was capable of. I shook my head, anger and sadness warring inside me. You tried to turn us against each other. You blamed Grace for something you did. She looked at me, her face crumpling. I'm sorry, I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I could make you see. I held up a hand, stopping her. You don't get to do that. You don't get to hurt people and call it love. The room was silent, the truth hanging in the air like a storm about to break. Evelyn sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked small, almost fragile. The mask she wore so well had slipped, and what was left was just a woman, scared and ashamed. Grace stood by the window, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wouldn't look at Evelyn, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. Daniel hovered near the kitchen, torn between his mother and his family. His jaw clenched so tight I thought he might break a tooth. I slipped my ring back onto my finger, feeling the familiar weight settle there. It should have brought comfort, but all I felt was exhaustion. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I know what I did was wrong. I felt like I was losing Daniel, like you were all slipping away from me. I thought if I could show you how easy it is to trust the wrong person, maybe you'd, I don't know, need me more. Daniel shook his head, his voice thick. Mom, you can't manipulate people like that. You can't hurt the people I love and expect me to thank you for it. She looked at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Daniel. I really am. Grace finally turned, her voice trembling but strong. You tried to ruin my relationship with my sister. You made me feel like a criminal in a house where I was supposed to feel safe. Evelyn's shoulders shook. I know, I was wrong. I let my fear get the better of me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my own voice. Evelyn, I want to believe you're sorry. But you need to understand what you did. You didn't just take a ring. You took trust. You took peace. You made us doubt each other, she nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll make it right. I'll leave. I don't want to cause any more trouble. Daniel stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. Maybe that's best, Mom. For now. Evelyn gathered her things in silence. She paused at the door, looking back at us, at Daniel, at Grace, at me. I hope one day you can forgive me, she said, her voice breaking. I watched her go, a strange mix of relief and sadness washing over me. I didn't know if I could forgive her, not yet, but I hoped for Daniel's sake that one day I might. After she left, the house felt lighter, as if a storm had finally passed. Grace let out a shaky breath, sinking onto the sofa. I can't believe it's over, she said, her voice barely audible. I sat beside her, wrapping my arms around her shoulders. I'm so sorry, Grace. I should have trusted you from the start. She shook her head. It's not your fault. She's always been like that. I wish things could be different. Daniel joined us, sitting on the coffee table in front of us. I'm sorry, too. I should have seen what was happening. We sat together in silence, the three of us, letting the quiet settle around us. Lila wandered in, her rabbit clutched to her chest. Is Grandma gone? She asked, her voice small. I nodded, pulling her into my lap. She's going home for a while, sweetheart, Lila frowned. Is she mad? I shook my head, kissing her hair. No, baby. She just needs some time to think. Grace smiled at Lila, her eyes softening. We all do, I think. The next few days were quiet. The tension that had filled the house slowly faded, replaced by something gentler, something like hope. Grace started looking for jobs again, her confidence slowly returning. Daniel and I talked late into the night, working through the hurt, rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, Grace came into the room, a tentative smile on her face. I got a call, she said. There's a job opening at the library. Part-time, but it's a start. I grinned, pulling her into a hug. That's wonderful, Grace. I'm so proud of you. She hugged me back, holding on a little longer than usual. Thank you for believing in me, for standing by me. I squeezed her tight. Always. That evening, Daniel and I sat on the porch, watching Lila chase fireflies in the yard. The air was warm, the sky streaked with pink and gold. I'm sorry about my mom, Daniel said quietly. I reached for his hand, lacing my fingers through his. It's not your fault. She's your mother. You love her. I understand. He looked at me, his eyes full of regret. I should have protected you. Both of you, I shook my head. We protected each other. That's what matters, he smiled, pulling me close. I love you. I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. I love you too. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The days that followed felt like a slow exhale after weeks of holding my breath. The house was quieter, but not empty, just calm, as if it was finally allowed to rest. Grace and I found ourselves falling back into old rhythms, sharing coffee in the mornings, laughing over silly things Lila said, and talking late into the night about everything and nothing. One evening, as I tucked Lila into bed, she looked up at me with those big, searching eyes. "Mommy, are you happy now?" Her question caught me off guard. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and smiled. "I am, sweetheart. Things were a little hard for a while, but we're okay now." She nodded, satisfied, and hugged her rabbit close. "I like it when everyone is nice." I kissed her goodnight, my heart aching with a bittersweet tenderness. Children always see more than we think. Downstairs, Grace was curled up on the couch with a book. She looked up as I entered, her face more relaxed than I'd seen in weeks. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" she asked quietly. I sat beside her, pulling my knees up under me. "I don't know. Maybe. But if she does, things will have to be different." Grace nodded, her gaze distant. "I used to think family meant you had to forgive everything, no matter what. But now I think maybe it means you protect each other, even from the people you love." I thought about that for a long moment. I think you're right. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means letting go of the hurt, but not the lesson. She smiled, closing her book. "You always were the wise one," I laughed, nudging her with my shoulder. "Only because I had to keep up with you." The next week, Daniel's phone rang one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner. He glanced at the screen, his face tightening. "It's Mom." I watched him step out onto the porch, his voice low and careful. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way he pinched the bridge of his nose. When he came back inside, he looked tired, but lighter somehow. "She wants to apologize," he said, sitting at the table. "She wants to come back and talk. Just the two of us for now." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and anxiety. "How do you feel about that?" He shrugged. I think I need to hear her out, but I told her things have to change. She can't come between us again." I reached for his hand, squeezing it. "I'm proud of you." He smiled, the lines around his eyes softening. "I'm proud of us." A few days later, Daniel met Evelyn at a small cafe in town. He came home quiet, thoughtful. That night, as we lay in bed, he told me what she'd said. "She's sorry, really sorry. She said she's been lonely since Dad died, and she took it out on you and Grace. She wants to try to do better." I listened, my heart softening a little. "Do you believe her?" He nodded slowly. "I think she means it, but I told her she needs to give us space. And she agreed." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That's all I wanted. Space, respect. He pulled me close, his voice gentle. "You have both, always." As the weeks passed, life settled into a new kind of normal. Grace started her job at the library, coming home each day with stories about the people she met and the books she discovered. Lila thrived, her laughter filling the house like music. Daniel and I found our way back to each other, stronger for what we'd survived. One Saturday morning, as I was making pancakes, Grace came into the kitchen, her face glowing. "I got offered a full-time position," she said, grinning. "Benefits, everything," I squealed, pulling her into a hug. "That's amazing." "I'm so happy for you." She hugged me back, her eyes shining. "I couldn't have done it without you." I shook my head, smiling. "You did this, Grace. You found your way," she laughed, wiping away a tear. "Maybe, but it helps to have someone believe in you." That afternoon, Daniel and I took Lila to the park. We watched her run through the grass, her hair flying behind her, her laughter echoing across the playground. I leaned against Daniel, feeling the sun warm my face. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing all this?" I asked quietly. He nodded, his arm around my shoulders. "Every day. But we didn't. We held on." I smiled, watching Lila chase a butterfly. We did. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I felt a deep sense of peace. We'd been tested by suspicion, by betrayal, by the people we loved most. But we'd come through it, not unscathed, but unbroken. And in that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the ones we expect to protect us. I never thought my mother-in-law would be the one to steal from me, or that she'd try to turn me against my own sister. But life has a way of testing the bonds we think are unbreakable. Looking back, I realize that trust isn't just about believing someone would never do you wrong. It's about believing in yourself, too. Believing that you'll find the strength to face the truth, even when it hurts. That you'll stand up for the people you love, even when it's hard. And that you'll forgive, not because someone deserves it, but because you deserve peace. My ring is back on my finger, but it means something different now. It's not just a symbol of my marriage, but of everything we've survived together. Of the family we've chosen and the boundaries we've learned to set. Of the forgiveness we've given and the lessons we'll never forget. If you're listening to this and you've ever been caught between loyalty and truth, I hope you know you're not alone. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. And sometimes, healing means letting go, not of love, but of the pain that keeps you from moving forward. Would you have done what I did? Would you have confronted the truth, even if it meant losing someone you cared about? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this story touched you, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear it. We all have secrets, and we all have the power to heal. Thank you for listening. Take care of your heart and each other.